In the 20th century, a government approved an experiment so unethical that it was hidden for decades. There were no warnings, no public debate, and no consent from the people involved. What happened was not an accident. It was planned, documented, and defended at the highest levels. And most people still don't know it ever happened. This wasn't ancient history. It didn't happen in a distant, lawless era. This took place in the modern world under established governments with trained professionals, medical oversight, and official paperwork. At the time, it was justified as necessary. Necessary for science, necessary for national interests, necessary for progress. But progress for whom is the real question. The experiment began during a period of intense global fear. Nations were racing for dominance, technology was advancing faster than ethics, and governments believed knowledge itself was a weapon. In this climate, moral boundaries weakened. If an experiment promised valuable data, it was allowed to continue. If people were harmed, it was considered collateral damage. And certain groups were seen as easier to sacrifice than others. The people chosen were not criminals. They were ordinary individuals, workers, patients, citizens who trusted authority. They were told they were receiving medical care. Some were told they were being monitored for routine conditions. Others were given no explanation at all. None of them were informed of the real purpose. They did not volunteer. They were selected. At first, the procedures appeared harmless. Simple examinations, basic treatments, routine follow-ups. But slowly, the real experiment began. Conditions were deliberately left untreated. Symptoms were observed instead of cured. Suffering became part of the data. Doctors recorded everything, and no one intervened. By this point, many professionals involved knew the experiment was wrong. They knew continuing meant permanent harm. They knew stopping meant admitting responsibility. So they chose silence. Reports continued to be written. Funding continued to be approved. And the experiment continued for years. The system protected itself. The most unsettling part is not the cruelty. It's that the experiment worked. The data collected was valuable. So valuable that it was quietly referenced in later research. The results were used, but the victims were erased. Their suffering became footnotes, stripped of context, stripped of accountability. Eventually, concerns began to surface. Internal complaints were ignored, documents were classified, and public awareness was carefully avoided. When the experiment finally ended, there was no announcement. It simply stopped. No trials, no consequences, no justice. Decades later, the truth emerged through leaked documents and investigative reporting. Public outrage followed. Officials issued statements. Apologies were made, but accountability never truly arrived. Most responsible parties faced no punishment. The victims received acknowledgement, but little else. History moved on. This experiment didn't happen because people were monsters. It happened because people followed orders. because authority went unquestioned, because silence was easier than resistance. History doesn't repeat itself because we forget. It repeats because we refuse to confront uncomfortable truths. And some truths were buried on purpose.